All right, everyone. Thank you for joining our College App Kickoff. My name is Amy Bencomo, College and Career Center Specialist at Prospect High School. Before I introduce you to college-related questions, this is a great opportunity to hear from an expert. Also, any parents that are joining us, you are extremely welcome. I'm glad you're here for an email either to myself or to Vanessa after. Especially our seniors have priority and also agency during these presentations. So with that being said, I'd like to welcome Vanessa of University of Colorado, Colorado Springs.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you so much, Ms. Bencomo. So glad to be here. So my name is Vanessa Aya, and I use pronouns she, her, and I'm with the University of Colorado, Colorado Springs, or UCCS. We are going to spend the next, I'd say approximately 40-45 minutes talking a little bit about financial aid and scholarships, the cost of education, the value of education, and some things for you to consider as you are getting ready to start your college lists or start your college application, excuse me. But as Ms. Bencomo said, please feel free to go ahead and drop your questions in the chat feature. I will have a lot of different links that I will send back out to you all, and I'll have them on the screen as well. So if you need to screenshot that, please feel free to do so. So let's go ahead and jump into the content. And I'll save some questions for the end. I know that there's a couple more workshops today, so I want to make sure I budget some time for your questions. And so then that way you have a little bit of breathing time before you jump into the 2 o'clock session. I think it's with my good friend Ruth from the University of Oregon. So anyway, in terms of our agenda that we're going to cover today in this session on financial aid and scholarships, we're going to talk about what I feel is that first important step when it comes to costs. And that's making sure that you're having those college cost conversations with your parents and your families. And we'll get into that right after this slide. We'll also talk about the total cost of attendance. As you have started to receive information from universities like mine, or ones that are in state, some of them are really good about making sure you understand the total cost of attendance. Others, maybe not so much. They might just be sharing with you the tuition and fees and the housing section, but there's other costs that are involved when you want to plan and budget for the next 4 years or beyond if you're looking to go on for an advanced degree. We'll talk a little bit about comparing the college costs, and I'll have a slide for you with some resources, particularly if you are looking at comparing not just in-state universities, but out-of-state universities. Hopefully we'll dispel some myths that, some students have, that it is too expensive to go out of state, and that might not be the case depending on how you target your search. We'll go into some of that financial aid process terminology, and I wish I could make that part a little bit more fun, but it is pretty straightforward. If I'm being quite honest, it is quite dry information, but nonetheless, it is important for you all to know the process when it comes to applying for free for federal financial aid. We'll talk about those different types. As I mentioned before, as you weigh the costs, you also want to make sure that you're asking yourself and informing yourself of the value of a college degree. And I have some stats for you related to that. I will refer to my good friend, Ms. Bencomo, with perhaps some local scholarships that you all might want to be on the lookout for within your districts, within your area, and then just some general tips that she has, passed on to students in previous years where they've been really successful in helping to get their costs covered. And then, like I said, we'll go into some Q&A. Phew. So lots of information. And so let's go. All right, so like I said, the college cost conversation. And so one of my favorite quotes, and I don't know where I got this was a couple of years ago, but I want you all to know this is kind of my lens around your college search. And the quote is that college is a match to be made, not a prize to be won. And so remember, students, that, there's a lot of things out there in the media that's telling you what's the best college. But honestly, that is such a personal thing for you all. You all have different academic goals. You all have different career dreams. And so I want you to keep in mind that you might see things focused on in the news, but you want to kind of stay the course and make sure that you're being true. And so planning how to finance a degree or invest in a degree, as Ms. Bencomo has mentioned, has become a more prominent part of the college application process. When you make yourself aware of the costs associated with college, your family is better positioned to incorporate educational costs into your savings plan. And so if you haven't, students, already had that budget conversation with your parents and families, I challenge you all to do that tonight or sometime before week's end. Full disclosure, while I have been working in higher ed for almost 25 years now, I've also been a parent, or I am a parent of 3 teenagers currently, one who is about to start his second year of college, another one who is like you all, class of 2023, getting ready to start their senior year at high school. And then I have my youngest who is going to be starting his freshman year of high school. And so, for sure with the older 2, I have had that conversation with them in terms of, kind of what's my expectation, what's their expectation of costs, and how much is a reasonable amount of loans to take out. If by chance they apply and get accepted to a school, amount of money they've saved and I've saved for them, what's going to work part-time before they head off to college. Is the expectation for them to work while they're in college? And so you want to make sure that you have these honest conversations now, because that will help shape your college lists and make for less surprises as you start to get your financial aid award letter. The thing you want to do is get accepted to some wonderful programs, start to get your financial aid letters, and come to the realization that they have not provided you with enough funding. So with your parents, should happen pretty soon. Remember that, again, there's not just one school that can potentially help match whatever you're trying to accomplish. And so you want to be researching, a wide variety of schools and have basically not just the one dream school, but potentially 2, 3, 4 schools to apply to. We'll talk a little bit again, in terms of federal financial aid, what they mean by the expected student family contribution. But again, this is a key area that if you plan on helping to finance your degree in the ways of student employment while you're in college, those are questions you can ask admissions counselors like myself now. Are there an abundance of student employment opportunities, student jobs on campus while you're attending, not just those that are work study, especially if you don't qualify for work studies? Also, are there internships available that are not just going to provide you with some real life experience before you head out into the job market, but potentially are they paid? And then of course, you're working towards this degree to hopefully either go on to grad school or get a job right after your bachelor's. You want to be asking us about the kinds of career centers, resources that we have, what sort of placement opportunities are happening on our campus. You should know that all universities are required to have what are called basically net price calculators. And so those net price calculators at the very basic level will take in your basic income information, your parents' basic income information, and then let you know kind of, an estimate of how much they'd be able to fund you and how much they'd be able to potentially scholarship you, so to speak, or provide financial aid. And so it can help you just kind of, at the very basic, give you an understanding of what is expected of you to pay. Let me give you an example. I was presenting to another district last month down in Orange County. And so I had pulled the net price calculator for Cal State Fullerton. And so that's an example of a net price, a pretty basic net price calculator where you can enter all of your basic information. Why are, again, net price calculators important? You get to know your net price. You get a better idea of what you'll pay for a particular college. It'll hopefully make comparing colleges easier. And so just in terms of some general tips, when you are playing with some of these university net price calculators, you want to make sure to try and answer the questions accurately. And just remember that this is just an estimate and the actual costs may end up being higher or lower than the estimate. And so with that, definitely jump on the universities that you are contemplating to get a sense of how much they cost. Some universities have even fancier calculators in that they can take in your academic information. So like your GPA, your test scores, if you took ACT or SAT, and then they can give you a good idea of how much they can scholarship you for. I always use Arizona State University as a good example of a net price calculator where you can put in your academic information. You let them know you're not a state student, and then it gives you some numbers that can, again, help you decide whether or not to move forward and apply to that university. As you talk about the college cost conversation too, I always let students know that there's a couple of other numbers you want to ponder or be aware of. One is the years to graduate. Common sense tells us that a 4-year bachelor's degree should take 4 years or less to finish. However, believe it or not, in our state of California, there are schools that their average rate to graduate with a bachelor's degree it's taking you longer for a wide variety of reasons. You hear, for example, that Cal State universities, they are impacted, which usually means that they just have a lot of qualified students, but not enough space. And so it's taking students longer because they can't get into the classes that they need to graduate in 4 years in a timely manner. And so those, again, are questions you want to ask college admissions counselors: is their average graduation rate? Because, I mean, if you're a parent like me, or, for you, if you're, eager to get to your goals, you want to make sure you're getting your bachelor's degrees done in a timely manner. All right, so there's that information. All right, so total cost of attendance. I mentioned that, as you're looking at all of our view books and all of our websites that have different costs, you want to make sure that you're looking at the total cost of attendance. And what we as universities do is we separate them into 2 columns. And so we have on the left side what is called billable costs, or things that will basically show up on each of your semester or quarter bills. And so that would be tuition and fees, and then, of course, living on campus with meals. However, when you start to receive your federal financial aid letters and your financial aid packages, they should be taking into account also these indirect costs and indirect costs, excuse me, can't talk today. And so these are things that, while they don't show up on your college bill each semester or each quarter, these are still things that you want to make sure that you have money to pay for, because they're going to come up. So of course, each semester you're going to have books and supplies that you'll need to pay for. If later on, when you're a junior, senior, et cetera, if you decide to move off campus, or maybe you're going to stick close to home and you're going to live with parents, we still give you an estimate of how much that might cost you if you do that. And then, of course, personal expenses. If you're, going to college and it's in a new city that you've never been, of course, course, you want to take advantage of some of those amenities and the experiences, shows, touristing, so to speak. So we try and budget for that on your financial aid letters, and then travel costs, whether that's automobiles, trains, planes, etc. So again, as you're comparing costs, you want to make sure you're taking all of that into account. Let me look at my notes real quick on that. All right. So let's jump to this slide, which is comparing college costs. And this one has a lot of data on it, but I feel it has a lot of good data. So I've mentioned, or maybe I didn't mention on this presentation. And so while I work for the University of Colorado, and I've worked for them, goodness, now for over 20 years, for the last 12 years, I've actually been regionally based in the state of California for them. So I work with students like you closely in the state of California and all through the Western states. And so students, I know that there are a lot of great choices in terms of higher education in the state of California. However, the costs vary depending on which systems you are looking at. And so we've got our well-renowned University of California system. Their total cost of attendance, and this is all on their website that you see here, because I work for a college, we got to source all of our data. And so you've got where all of these numbers are coming from along the bottom. And so the total cost of attendance as a California resident, if you get into the UC system, is about $38,000 per year. That is a big number. That is not a total for 4 years, that is per year. Okay, then when you start to look at our Cal State system, also a great system, it's a little bit cheaper, drops down to about $28,000 per year. But like I mentioned, some of our Cal States, and Ms. Bencomo might have a little bit more recent information about some of those Cal States that are taking longer for students to get done than 4 years. So you might not be looking at just $28,000 times 4. If the graduation rate is more like 5.5 years, then you got to take that into account. In terms of the out-of-state colleges and universities, so you can see that surprisingly, it is just a little bit more than if you were to stay at a UC campus at $39,000 per year. The interesting thing about this number is, I'm curious, by a show of hands, how many of you, I think there was a workshop on this earlier this week, how many of you are aware of the Western Undergraduate Exchange Program, or WUI for short? All right, excellent. Okay, a few of you. All right, I'll give you a brief synopsis of what WUI is. So WUI, the Western Undergraduate Exchange Program, is an opportunity for California students like yourself to look at certain public universities in 14, 15 Western states and get a reduced tuition rate. So if by chance you are looking at certain public universities in Colorado, like mine, like my campus, or if you're looking at Hawaii, Washington, Oregon, Nevada, Arizona, New Mexico, etc., you don't pay the full out-of-state price, you don't pay the cheapest resident price, you pay somewhere in between. And so this average here then for WUI schools actually goes down pretty dramatically. And you have some WUI schools that are closer to this Cal State annual cost of attendance. You have some WUI schools that might be just under, like my campus is just a little bit under the UC tuition, not quite as inexpensive as Cal State. And so that's something to keep in mind if you are interested in not going too far away from home, and again, getting honestly a pretty good deal if you look at WUI public universities. And then finally, this last number, it does take into account all private colleges and universities in the US, in-state and out-of-state, and that is the largest number, looking at about $50,000 per year. However, again, if you do your research right, there are some private colleges that have some pretty significant discounts that drop this down further. I've seen as much as 30 to 40% discounted rate in the ways of scholarships at some private colleges and universities. So again, very large numbers that we're dealing with. That's why it's so important right now, if you have the time, because I know that senior year will get busy for you all students. If you have the time to do the research, your pocketbook will thank you later. Let's see. Just make sure. All right, let's go to the next slide. So on this next slide, I will probably have Ms. B chime in a little bit. You didn't see on the other slide, California community colleges. And for students of California, you all have an amazing opportunity that has come up in recent years. And often your California community colleges refer to them as the Promise programs. And again, for where you all are at, I definitely encourage students to make sure they're applying to a wide variety of schools, but know that you can easily also apply to your local California community college, because most California community colleges have what these Promise programs offer, which is 2 years of free community college, provided that you go full-time and other stipulations. It's a great way to save money. If by chance you're targeting places like the UC campus, some of the UC campuses actually have higher transfer acceptance rates versus if you apply as a freshman. But Ms. Bencomo, can you maybe elaborate a little bit about your local schools? I also put up the links on here.
The local community colleges. So yes, we have De Anza. You actually mentioned all of them right here. And so De Anza is partnered with Foothill. So they will collaborate on programs there. They use the Promise. I'm not sure who San Jose City College is partnered with. It might be Evergreen. So they kind of have a similar, they're a little bit tricky in that it actually needs to be need-based. But I do think that if you have that need, they then offer even more programs. And then West Valley College is partnered with Mission, and they use the community grant. And so that is, yes, 2 years of free education, which if your plan is a CSU or UC, it's perfectly aligned because they have all the guaranteed transfer courses. So you can get that general ed taken care of.
Awesome, thank you. Yeah, and again, it doesn't opt you out of having to apply for the 4-year colleges now. It's just an additional application. The bonus with just adding this to your list is it's free to apply to your California community colleges, and also you pretty much know right away if you've been accepted. So again, it's just one opportunity you can add to your college list. All right, so the financial aid process, there are different forms that are available to you so that, again, you can see, and we universities can see what we might be able to provide you in the ways of aid. Most students, many students, starting on October 1, you all will fill out the FAFSA form, the free application for federal student aid. And let me go ahead and drop that link. So again, mark on your calendar, students, starting October 1, you and your families can go into that and basically add your basic income information, and that will spit back out to you. This is what their website looks like. It will spit back out to you a number that's called your expected family contribution, or EFC. And that number is also received by colleges and universities when they're trying to figure out what kinds of things you qualify for. Some of my students, particularly my Dreamer students, you all will fill out instead the form that is found at the California State Student Aid Commission website. And let me go ahead and copy that over. Whoops. And so that, I'm not sure when that one opens up. I would imagine it opens up around the same time, but that has a deadline of, let me go back. You do have to make sure that your Dreamer application is turned in by March 2nd. Same with the FAFSA as well, particularly if you are looking at your in-state public schools. Other private universities might have different priority dates. And you might have heard that from the varying workshops that you've already had. Really important for you to note the dates for the different universities you're applying to. Don't assume that we all do it the same. I wish we did it all the same. Would make everyone's lives a lot easier, but we don't. So just make sure that you're keeping track of all the priority dates and deadlines. Some private universities, in addition to either the FAFSA or the California Student Aid Commission form, they might require you to fill out what is called the CSS profile. It is on the College Board website. And one of the big ones that I believe still wants you to fill it out that a lot of California students apply to is USC. And so it asks for a little bit more in-depth information when it comes to income, assets, and things like that. So it's a list of about 400 colleges that will want you to have the CSS profile. Just remember, when it comes to financial aid, there are lots of websites that potentially come up via Google. And some of them say that they can offer your families advice. But just remember, again, just like many things on the internet, not all of them might be truly helpful. Not all of them might be accurate. So just make sure to fact check what you're pulling up. Definitely run it by your college center experts because they know which ones are reliable websites when it comes to financial aid. All right, so when you fill out these various forms, there's basically 4 things, and you see it here on this pie chart, that we are hoping to award you upon completion of the forms. And so a lot of students, of course, and parents, we want our students to qualify for the right side of the pie chart, the things that you do not need to pay back. And so things like scholarships, you earn those, but you don't have to pay those back. Same with grants. The left side, not necessarily bad things, and we'll talk a little bit about that later. But loans, obviously, you have to pay back, typically 6 months after you graduate with your degree. And then work study is basically money that you earn via a student job. Just because, again, as you start to get your financial aid award letters, just because you don't have work study on your financial aid letter, that doesn't mean you can't work on campus. When many of our offices or many of our campuses, our student employment office, when you go in and look at the list of part-time jobs that are available, you'll see that ones might be labeled like, oh, you got to be a work study student to apply for this one. Although many might also be labeled, you can be either a work study student or an hourly student. So again, if that was a plan of yours to work part-time while you're in college and you don't see work study on your financial aid letter, that doesn't mean that you can't do that. All right, so those are the 4 different parts of the pie chart. When you start to get your award letters, you'll see different verbiage. When it comes to grants, the top 2 are the federal need-based types of grants that are available. There are going to be a wide variety of state grants. You'll hear Cal Grant tossed around. That again is need-based. And then institutional grants or university grants might also be on your award letter. And again, it varies depending on the university. So make sure to not be shy with us admissions counselors and ask us questions. Of course, there's a wide variety of scholarships, based on your talent. They're usually competitive. Sometimes they're automatic, but we've got a lot of different things out there at the university level. Ms. B, in terms of local scholarships that students should be aware of, are there any particular ones you want to call out for them?
Okay, so local scholarships, I put them on my billboard that I have outside the College and Career Center. I also encourage, when you fill out the brag sheet on Naviance, make sure that you say that you're interested in scholarships. You have the option to say yes or no, and students that say they're not interested in scholarships will not hear about scholarships. And I'm always surprised because sometimes we have worthy candidates, but when we look on their brag sheet, they say no. So advocate for yourself, complete your brag sheet so that we know what kind of scholarships we can match you with. And then, but also Naviance will be a great resource for that. And for all college and career specialists, we usually have a binder or a billboard or something that we put local scholarships on. So thank you for asking about that.
Yeah, for sure. The other thing, students, I would encourage you to talk to your families about their employer-based ones. So for example, my husband, he works for Intel, and I know that there is actually a scholarship for children of Intel employees. And so, you might want to check that out. In terms of if your family or parents were in the military, you'll want to make sure that you look into how or if they have military benefits that you can utilize. And then, like I said, just be on the lookout for any local scholarships that might be out there in your area. As always, kind of like that disclaimer I gave you about financial aid websites, and just to be careful of your sources. When you're looking at various scholarship websites and databases, you should never have to pay money to apply to an outside scholarship. And so just be aware of that. There are some typical ones that have scholarship websites that have been around for quite a while. FastWeb is one that has been around for a while. That one I would be careful of, just because they have good ones on there. But there are ones that are sweepstakes, or like they do random drawings, versus ones that you write an essay based on talent, things like that. CAPEX is another one that's been around for a while. And then, of course, just the typical websites that you've been using to research at colleges, you'll probably find a lot of scholarship information on there as well. All right, so that's the free money. As I mentioned before, work study is money that you earn. If it's federal work study, obviously it's based on need, but any student can look at getting a job on campus. What's one of the lovely things about working on campus is your employer is us, it's the university. And so when it comes time to around midterms, finals, and if you needed time off to study or to do a project, we get it, because your first priority with us is not as an employee, it's as a student. And so we tend to be, of course, pretty lenient, I feel, around those times that you need to prioritize being a student. Also, it's just another great place, another set of eyes on you while you're in college, another resource to come to whenever you're faced with challenges in college. And then, of course, there's student jobs on campus for a wide variety of personalities. If you like walking backwards and talking to large groups, come work in the admissions office. If you like the quiet of libraries, there's jobs there. If you are a barista now at a coffee shop, and you can do that on our campuses as well. Many of us have a lot of coffee shops on our campus. And so again, lots of opportunities for different personalities. And then finally, loans. The federal loans, you'll see that perhaps as an offering on your financial aid letters come spring. They have what's called direct subsidized, which means that you don't pay the interest on the loan while you're in college. And then unsubsidized, you are paying for the interest while you are in college. There are also parent loans. And then of course, there are private loans potentially through your own credit union and banks. The latter tends to have higher interest rates versus the federal rate. So let's see. We'll talk a little bit about, I have another slide for you, kind of like what the national average right now is about when it comes to that average debt, because again, you see a lot of things on the news about, you know, loans being such a bad thing and whatnot, but again, it's an investment, and you know, it's something you want to make sure that you're talking with your parents and families as to what's an acceptable amount of loan debt for you to take on, because I and many other universities will always advise that you don't borrow any more money than you absolutely need for college. All right. Oh, here's that slide right here. Okay, so this actually is a slide. Let me give you the source link for that. We are part of the University of Colorado system. And so every year, we like to put out as a system what makes us affordable, what makes us a good value, et cetera. And so if by chance you're looking at the UC's, Cal State, I imagine that they have these kinds of numbers for you. But basically, you'll see on this slide here, all of the Colorado public universities. The gold would be all of the University of Colorado system schools. And here's Colorado Springs. So that's the campus I'm with. And so the average 4-year loan debt that our students are coming out of after they're done with their degree is about $26,000 per year. That's actually right at the national average when you're taking into account all of the colleges and universities. And so, you know, again, something to ask. Not all admissions counselors might not know this, but here's the part that I found kind of interesting, and that's this calculator over here on the right side. And so let me drop that in to the chat. All right, so you're wondering, okay, 26,000 average 4-year total debt. You know, what does that look like in the ways of a loan payment once I get a job? Will I be able to afford it? Okay, so with this calculator, you can put in the principal amount of the loan. So what I did was I moved that $26,000 figure over here. You usually have 10 years to pay back your student loans. And so hence why I put that number of monthly payments. And then right now, the simple interest rate on federal loans is 3.73. And so this part is a little bit harder to read, but what this computes out to is upon graduation, 6 months after you graduate with your bachelor's, your monthly payment for a $26,000 total loan debt is about $265 a month. And so you're like, okay, that's not bad. That potentially, you know, if I forego the coffee every day, if I think about, you know, what car loan I'm going to take out, my cell phone bill, all of that, that's actually not bad. That interest number, the total interest cost is pretty big, $5,000 per year. But what's interesting about this calculator is it's telling me that if I take out this much loan, then basically my annual job salary better be at least a little under $40,000 a year in order for me to pay that alongside with all of the other expenses I potentially will have as an adult, as a working professional. And good news, students, many universities have a way higher average minimum job salary than under $40,000 a year. You know, many of us, you know, again, depending on the program, you know, are more in the ways of $50,000 and above. And so again, this might be something that you want to play with depending on what type of job you might be looking. I can think of my nursing students who are definitely making way more than this minimum annual salary of $39,000 a year. Our engineering students that we have on our campus in Colorado, they're getting job offers more than that. So again, good questions to ask your potential universities. All right, so as I mentioned, these are the different terminology and vocabulary that you will see as it relates to your financial aid award letters. Basically, when you fill out the FAFSA and you fill out the CSS profile, we are trying to see, we're trying to give you the total cost of attendance. We're taking that number from those forms of how much you'll contribute to your college education, and we're trying to meet your need. And so again, we're trying to meet your need with, one or more of those 4 parts of the pie chart that I had shown you earlier. There are different things that go into that expected family contribution. And I can tell you now, many parents and particularly parents and families, they're like, they think I can pay what towards college? Often that EFC is a lot bigger than we think it should be. But know that what's being taken into account is all of your assets, income, your savings, also how many kids are in college. And then just know, students, that at any given time when it comes to the financial aid process, so like I mentioned, October 1 is that first opportunity for you to get in and submit that FAFSA information. If something happens after October 1, you can always reach out to our colleges and universities to let them know of these sudden, life circumstances, whether that's, COVID is a great example. 2 years ago, we had a lot of students who their parents got laid off, or health expenses come up. So know, students, that it's not a hard and fast number. Once you submit it, universities will work with you if something happens between October 1 of you filing and, all the way up until the first day of school even, and even throughout school, if things happen. All right. Okay, so I talked about this idea of value of a college degree, because the other thing that I really don't like seeing in the news and on media is how going to college and getting your degree isn't worth it anymore. And I very much beg to differ on that. Again, if you go to our cu.edu/affordability website, you'll see this data compared to high school graduates. Our college graduates are earning on average $1.5 million over their lifetime. They experience lower employment, unemployment rates. And then, of course, they have better healthcare, access to healthcare, insurance, and things like that. And this is a little plug for my system. Around half of our CU bachelor's degree recipients graduate with no debt. And so, again, just like your college and career center specialists and your counselors, we very much feel strongly that the return on investment for the long term is there for a bachelor's degree and then some. All right, again, that last plug, visit your college and career centers. They often will have the latest and greatest information for you. If you're looking for a specific contact for a school, and they probably have it, they probably even know who exactly will be reading your application, especially some of those private universities. So definitely utilize their resources. Ms. B, did you have any other things you wanted to say to students related to that?
Well, absolutely. Thank you very much. You were spot on. I was taking some notes and I thought, oh, need to make sure that if this isn't mentioned, to mention it, but you, you did. So this, students, parents, this was a great presentation. I definitely could not have done it better. And but I love the part about just check in. I get to know who's at your school, the resources, because we build relationships with school, institutions across the US. And sometimes we know some tricks like, oh, okay, for this school, make sure you apply before this deadline, because actually there's scholarship deadlines, not just deadlines for regular admission. So sometimes schools can be a little bit confusing that way. So you want to know those deadlines as well as the admission deadlines. And any way you can save money, do that, because there's a great return on investment, but if you can save money while doing it, there's nothing wrong with that. This is personal. So you want to be placed in a school that feels good, because that is where you are going to see the most value. You're going to spend this time discerning what's important to you, and you want that to be aligned with the school that you choose. So have those conversations with your parents or guardians. Reach out, ask those questions of the institutions that you're interested in, but enjoy the experience at the same time. Always feel that information is power, and so that you can then enjoy how you are growing during this experience.
Yes, for sure. So I will pause here and just give you a minute or two to drop in any questions that you might have about this presentation. Let me slot